Hi all. My name is Ivan and I am a traveler. Over the years, I have traveled to many countries, got acquainted with different cultures, but one place has always attracted me again and again in Moscow, the heart of Russia. And so I decided to share with you the best route that will allow you to see the essence of this amazing city in 4 hours. You know, when I first heard about such an excursion, I asked myself, how is it possible to show a person the real Moscow in 4 hours? The second question that tormented me, how many beautiful places have I missed in all my previous visits to the capital? And the third, most important question was, why didn't anyone tell me before about these amazing observation platforms, which offer views of the entire city? I will tell you in detail about each stop, share my impressions and show you why this excursion was a revelation for me. Get ready for a journey that will change your view of the capital. Introduction to traveling around Moscow, getting to know the route and history of the city. What if I told you that everything you believed about Moscow turns out to be only part of the truth? Do you know what really lies behind the facades of the buildings we see every day? Are you ready to learn the real history and secrets of the capital in just 4 hours? You will learn about this and much more from our video. Today we will go on an amazing excursion that will show Moscow as few people see it. This is not just a sightseeing tour, it is a real journey through the centuries, where every stone breathes history, and every turn of the road reveals a new side of this great city. Once upon a time, a long time ago, around the end of the 15th century, a main square appeared in Moscow, the heart of the capital, which witnessed a great many events. It was by decree of Grand Duke Ivan III that the area in front of the Kremlin fortress walls was cleared of wooden buildings that could cause fires and danger to the royal residence. Imagine, in the place where the famous Red Square now stands, even then a trading platform was formed, life was in full swing there and the most important events for the whole country flared up. Initially, the square was called Torgovaya because there were shops and markets where merchants sold their goods. Later it acquired the name Trinity, thanks to the Trinity Church located there. Only in the 17th century did it receive the name Red, which is associated not only with the color, but also with the meaning of the word red in the Old Russian language, beautiful and important. With each century, the importance of the square grew. New buildings and structures appeared here. At the end of the 17th century, the Mint was erected, and at the turn of the 18th century, Moscow University was opened in the building of the main pharmacy. Red Square became the center not only of trade, but also of the political life of the country, where royal decrees were read out, ambassadors were greeted and important celebrations took place. Have you ever wondered how many destinies each stone in this square has changed? From the execution place, with its stone circle, from where conciliar verdicts and laws were proclaimed, to the famous walls of the Kremlin, which protected power and the state. What did it take to create such an architectural ensemble that has amazed people for centuries? This route is like a time machine, allowing you to relive great moments in history, feel the spirit of ancient Moscow, which was able to withstand all the storms and transform itself to become a modern capital. And all this in 4 hours, filled with exciting stories and real-life examples. Look carefully, because the most interesting places are ahead, hiding so many secrets and inspiration. Stay tuned, we're just getting started. The heart of Moscow, Red Square, St. Basil's Cathedral and famous streets. When I first saw Red Square with my own eyes, I didn't believe that it was real. A picture opened before me that seemed to come to life from the pages of history. This is not just a square, it is a sacred place where the fate of an entire country was born, where every paving stone tells about the glorious and tragic events experienced by our great Russia. Red Square officially appeared in the 15th century. Do you know why here? By order of Grand Duke Ivan III, the wooden buildings that surrounded the eastern wall of the Kremlin and were constantly burning, threatening the royal residence, were demolished. On the site of these buildings near the eastern Kremlin wall, a square for small trade was organized. Initially, it was simply called Trade or Fire due to the frequent fires of wooden trading benches. Later, in the 16th century, it began to be called Trinity, because the Trinity Church was located in the southern part of the square. And only in the 17th century it received the name Red, a word that in the Old Russian language meant a beautiful, ceremonial, and important square. Imagine, I'm standing in this place, and the real chronicle of Russia is unfolding before me. Here on Lobmy Mesto, that same round stone elevation with a platform surrounded by a parapet, which was rebuilt in 1786 according to the design of the architect Matvey Kozakov, the royal decrees were read out. People gathered in hundreds to hear news from the supreme power. This was the heart of the information life of Moscow, a place where people flocked, wanting to know what was decided in the high chambers of power. But Lobnoy Mesto remembers not only the solemn announcements. Executions were carried out here. People came here when it was necessary to punish enemies of the state. On July 25, 1570, the largest mass execution in the history of the square took place. At the height of the Oprichnina terror, Tsar Ivan the Terrible ordered the execution of more than 100 boyars on suspicion of conspiracy. How many tears, how much despair this square saw. But I don't want to dwell on the sad moments. Red Square has also witnessed great triumphs. Foreign ambassadors were greeted here with great pomp and ceremony. Holiday fairs were held where traders from different lands brought their wonderful goods. Popular uprisings, unrest and riots, all this happened on this legendary square. The square has become the center of political life in the capital throughout the centuries. By the end of the 17th century, the importance of Red Square in the life of Moscow and the Russian state had increased incredibly. In 1697, the mint was erected here, a building where coins were minted for the entire empire. In 1699, the Zemsky Order appeared. Later, the main pharmacy building with a tower was built. It was a place where medicines were prepared for the royal court and aristocracy. And in 1750, Moscow University opened in the building of the main pharmacy, an educational institution that became a source of knowledge for entire generations of Russian scientists and thinkers. In the 18th century, the square became the center of cultural life in Moscow. Imagine, the book trade was going on at the Spasskaya Gate, the first public library was operating, where people could get acquainted with the works of domestic and foreign authors. The square lost its purely commercial significance and became a place of education and culture. In 1799, a wooden triumphal gate was built near the Kazan Cathedral in honor of the celebration of the Poltava victory. In 1730, a new theater was built, also wooden, the architect of which was the famous Russian architect Bartholomew Rastrelli. Gradually, the square lost its purely commercial significance and became the center of cultural and social life. And now we come to the most important symbol of Red Square, St. Basil's Cathedral, or as it is also called, the Cathedral of the Intercession of the Holy Virgin on the Moat. This architectural masterpiece was built by Ivan the Terrible in 1561 to commemorate the conquest of the Kazan Khanate. Did you know that this cathedral is unique? 8 church towers located around the main 9th pillar symbolize the days of decisive battles that were fought during the conquest of Kazan. When I look at this cathedral, I get goosebumps. Its multicolored heads, similar to tons of flame or crowns, rise into the sky, creating a fantastic image. I have never seen such unusual architecture in any country in the world. Every detail, every line, every color, all this speaks of the greatness of Russian architecture, of how our ancestors could create beauty that can withstand centuries. But that's not all. There are other significant buildings on Red Square. In the northern part of the square stands the Historical Museum, a grandiose building with red brick walls that houses priceless artifacts and evidence of the history of our country. Next to it stands the Kazan Cathedral, built in the 1620s in honor of the liberation of Moscow from the Poles. The two-span Resurrection Gate, which rose next to this cathedral, served as the main entrance to Red Square. In the southern part of the square there is another outstanding architectural monument, the Kremlin with its historical walls and towers. Inside the Kremlin there are chambers, cathedrals and museums that store truly priceless artifacts and evidence of the history of this great country. This is a fortress that survived enemy invasions, uprisings and revolutions, but remains standing as a symbol of the inviolability of our state. In the time of troubles of 1612, the People's Militia of Minin and Pozharsky liberated the Kremlin from the Polish invaders. The fighting took place right here, on Red Square, in the center of the capital. It was a testing time for Russia, but the people survived thanks to the courage and heroism of their sons. After Peter the Great declared St. Petersburg the capital of the empire, the Moscow Kremlin and Red Square lost their primary political importance. However, the square was not forgotten. In 1804 it was paved and restored. After the War of 1812, the square needed serious reconstruction and was significantly rebuilt. In 1786 to 1810, the stone shops were rebuilt and new trading rows were erected. The two-story arcade covered almost the entire perimeter of the square, creating a harmonious architectural ensemble. In the 17th year of the 20th century, Red Square became one of the main sites of revolutionary events. The Kremlin was fired from by artillery. Later, Vladimir Lenin addressed the people with speeches there. The Bolsheviks and the Soviet government gave Red Square a new status. It became the main place for all ceremonial parades and processions, a memorial to revolutionary heroes. But the most legendary moment in the history of the square occurred on November 1941. German tanks were stationed only 40 kilometers from Moscow. The enemy was close. And so, on the paving stones of Red Square, a military parade took place, a legendary parade, the participants of which, combat vehicles and infantry, walked straight from this square to defend the capital, went to the front line, where the fate of the nation was being decided. It was a parade of unprecedented courage, showing the enemy that Moscow lives, that it is ready for defense, that the spirit of the Soviet people is not broken. On June 24, 1945, the Victory Parade took place on Red Square, a celebration that embodied the joy and pride of our people. The troops marched through the square, carrying banners and awards, celebrating their greatest triumph over fascism. Soldiers, officers, generals, they all walked along these paving stones to show the world that Russia is invincible. And now the next stop of our journey awaits us, the highest points of Moscow, from where a view of this entire majestic city will open up. Heights of Moscow, observation decks of Sparrow Hills and Poklanaya Hill. Imagine, you climb to the highest point in Moscow, and a breathtaking panorama opens before you. This is Sparrow Hills, a place where every stone preserves the memory of great events and where every glance at the city is filled with inspiration. Did you know that it is from these heights that the most picturesque view of the capital and the bend of the Moscow River opens? Vorobiyovy Gory is not just a natural attraction, it is a historical place where important events once took place. Here, on these slopes, in ancient times the village of Kalamazhnaya was located, and later the village of Vorobyovo. In the 17th century, a monastery appeared here, and in the 19th century, Vorobiyovy Gory became a favorite walking destination for Muscovites and guests of the capital. In 1937, the famous Dynamo Stadium was built on this site, and later a university complex, which became one of the symbols of Soviet architecture. Today, the Vorobiyovy Gory observation deck is a place where you can see all the beauty of Moscow. A panorama of the city stretches out in front of you, where the Kremlin spires, skyscrapers and green parks are visible on the horizon. In clear weather, you can see even the farthest outskirts of the capital. This place is especially popular among photographers and lovers of scenic views. Here you can take memorable photos that will stay with you for a lifetime. But that's not all. Vorobiyovy Gory is not only beauty, but also history. Here, on these slopes, parades, holidays and important events took place. In 1941, when the enemy was at the walls of Moscow, it was from these heights that the defense of the capital was observed. And in the post-war years, Vorobiyovy Gory became a symbol of revival and hope. Now imagine that we are going to another famous observation deck, Poklanaya Gora. This is a place where every stone preserves the memory of the heroic events of the Great Patriotic War. Poklanaya Hill is not just a hill, it is a memorial complex dedicated to the memory of those who gave their lives for the freedom and independence of our country. The memorial complex on Poklanaya Hill was opened in 1995 in honor of the 50th anniversary of the victory. Here you will find a museum dedicated to the history of the war, monuments, alleys and sculptures that tell about the exploits of Soviet soldiers. Each element of this complex is filled with deep meaning and evokes respect and gratitude. The observation deck on Poklanaya Hill offers views of the entire memorial complex and the surrounding area. Here you can feel the atmosphere of memory and respect that reigns in this place. This place is especially popular among tourists and residents of the capital who want to honor the memory of heroes and remember the great events that changed the course of history. Vorobiyovy Gory and Poklanaya Gora are not just observation platforms, they are places where history and nature are intertwined into a single picture. Here you can see the beauty of Moscow, feel its spirit and learn a lot of interesting things about the past and present of the capital. Modern fascination of the capital, Moscow City and Mosfilm Cinema Studio. Imagine, you look at the Moscow skyline and see in front of you a real fairy tale made of glass and metal. This is Moscow City, a complex of skyscrapers that has become a symbol of the modern capital. Did you know that it is here, among the tallest buildings in Europe, that you can see how modern Moscow breathes, how it strives for the future, without forgetting its roots? Moscow City is not just a business center, it is a real city within a city. The offices of the largest companies, hotels, restaurants, residential complexes, and even parks are concentrated here. The tallest skyscraper in Russia is the Federation Tower, which rises to a height of more than 300 meters. From its observation deck, a panorama opens up that will take your breath away. You see the entire city at a glance and understand how large and diverse Moscow is. But that's not all. In Moscow City you can not only work and relax, but also study, play sports, attend exhibitions and concerts. All conditions for a comfortable life and work have been created here. This complex also has unique architectural solutions that make it one of the most beautiful places in the capital. Each building is a work of art that surprises and inspires. Now imagine that we are going to another famous attraction, the Mosfilm Film Studio. This is the place where legendary films that are known and loved all over the world were filmed. Mosfilm is not just a film studio, it is a real cultural center where fairy tales and stories are born that touch the hearts of millions of viewers. The Mosfilm Film Studio was founded in 1935. Since then, more than 3,000 films have been shot here, among which there are real masterpieces of Soviet and Russian cinema. On the territory of the studio you can see the scenery that was used in famous films, get acquainted with the history of cinema and learn a lot of interesting things about how film masterpieces are created. Mosfilm is a place where every corner preserves the memory of great actors, directors, and screenwriters. Here you can feel the atmosphere of creativity and inspiration that reigns in the studio. There is also a museum at Mosfilm, where unique exhibits related to the history of cinema are collected. This place is especially popular among tourists and film lovers who want to learn more about how films are made and how cinema lives. Moscow City and the Mosfilm Film Studio are not just attractions, they are places where modernity and tradition are intertwined into a single picture. Here you can see the beauty of modern Moscow, feel its spirit and learn a lot of interesting things about the present and future of the capital. Don't forget about the useful services that we indicate in the pinned comment. Subscribe to the channel, like or dislike. Have a nice holiday everyone.